These are real cases that still haunt national park rangers to this day. 1. Paul Fugate, Chiricahua National Monument, Arizona, 1980. Ranger Paul Fugate went for a short hike during his shift and told a coworker he'd be right back. He never returned. When they searched for him, his radio and belongings were untouched. No footprints, no body, nothing. He's still listed as missing over 40 years later, despite one of the largest search efforts in the park's history. 2. Dennis Martin, Great Smoky Mountains National Park, Tennessee, 1969. A 6-year-old boy was playing hide-and-seek with his family near Spence Field. He ran into the woods and never came back. Hundreds searched the area for weeks. Rangers, Green Berets, even FBI agents. They found no clues, no clothing, no footprints. A nearby hiker reported hearing a blood-curdling scream around the same time. Dennis was never found. 3. Barbara Bolick, Bitterroot Mountains near Yellowstone, 2007. Barbara was hiking with a family friend on the Blodgett Canyon Overlook Trail. She stopped for a moment to take in the view. Her friend turned away for just a second. When he looked back, she was gone. He hiked the entire trail yelling her name. Massive search teams scoured the area. Helicopters, dogs, everything. But Barbara was never found. These cases are real. No theories, no answers. Just people vanishing in national parks without a trace. So what's really happening out there? Accidents, or is there something we're not being told? Some missing 411 cases still haunt park rangers to this day. These are some of the most chilling. 1. Stacey Arras, Yosemite, 1981. Stacey walked just 50 yards from her group to take photos. She vanished in broad daylight. Rangers found her camera lens cap, but no footprints, no struggle, and no sign of her, despite days of searching. 2. Charles McCullar, Crater Lake National Park. 1975 19-year-old Charles set out to photograph the park in winter. Months later, rangers found his camera equipment and his pants neatly placed near a creek. The rest of him was gone, with no tracks in the snow and no clear cause of death. 3. Alfred Beilhartz, Rocky Mountain National Park, 1938. A 4-year-old boy vanished while hiking with his family. 5 days later, a group of hikers spotted him sitting on a ledge high above a canyon, an area no child could reach alone. When rangers arrived, he was gone. They never saw him again. These cases keep rangers awake at night, and none have ever been solved. Which one haunts you the most? Park rangers will tell you. Some disappearances never leave their minds. People vanish in these parks under the strangest circumstances, and some cases still give them chills to this day. Case 1, Jacob Gray, Olympic National Park, 2017. Jacob rode into the park on a bicycle loaded with camping gear. His bike was found abandoned near the road, but Jacob was nowhere to be seen. Search teams combed the wilderness for months. When his remains were eventually found deep in the backcountry, miles from where he started, there were still no answers about why he left all his gear behind. Case 2, the disappearance of Connie Johnson, Bitterroot Mountains, 2018. Connie was a seasoned backcountry cook for hunting camps, known for her experience in the wilderness. She vanished while working at a remote site in the Bitterroot Mountains. Search teams and helicopters scoured the area, but she was never found. Only her loyal dog returned to camp days later. Rangers say the terrain makes no sense for someone so skilled to disappear without a trace. Case 3, Christopher Tompkins, Harris County, Georgia, 2002. Though not inside a national park, his case still circulates among ranger discussions for its eerie details. Christopher was surveying land with coworkers when he suddenly vanished. His tools were tangled in nearby brush, and a single boot was found on the roadside. But there were no tracks, no signs of struggle, and no clue where he went. If you were the ranger reading these files, would you ever feel safe hiking here alone? Which of these cases do you think is the most chilling? Let me know in the comments, and don't miss part 6. By now you've heard of Missing 411, but part 10 is different. These cases are so bizarre, they still keep park rangers awake at night. Case 1, Stephen Kubacki, Great Lakes, 1978. Stephen was a college student skiing near Lake Michigan when he vanished. Searchers found his skis and poles neatly placed and footprints in the snow that suddenly stopped, like he'd been plucked out of thin air. 15 months later, Stephen reappeared in Massachusetts, 700 miles away, with no memory of where he'd been. His backpack was filled with maps he didn't recognize and clothes that weren't his. To this day, no one knows if Stephen was lost, abducted, or something far stranger. Case 2. Thomas Bowman, Sierra Madre Mountains, 1958. 8-year-old Thomas was hiking with his family when he ran ahead on the trail. In a matter of seconds, he was gone. Dozens of searchers scoured the mountains, helicopters flew overhead, yet no footprints or signs of him were ever discovered. Some rangers believe a wild animal could have taken him, but there was no evidence, no sounds, and the terrain was open enough that someone should have seen something. His case remains one of the eeriest vanishings in California's wilderness. Case 3, Laura Bradbury, Joshua Tree National Park, 1984. Laura was just 3 years old, camping with her family when she vanished near the Indian Cove campground. Her parents only looked away for a moment, but that was all it took. A massive search was launched with rangers, helicopters, and even psychics, but Laura was never found. The desert is vast, but experts say they should have at least discovered clothing, bones, or some trace. Rangers describe her case as if the earth itself swallowed her whole. 3 people, 3 vanishings, no answers. Which of these cases gives you the biggest chill? The skier who lost over a year of his life, the boy who vanished mid-hike, or the little girl swallowed by the desert? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't miss part 11. Every year, people vanish inside America's national parks, often leaving behind no trace, no clues, and no reason. These are 3 real missing 411 cases that still haunt park rangers today. Case 1, Dan Campbell, Yellowstone National Park, 1991. Dan Campbell and his dog were dropped off near Hell-Roaring Creek for what was supposed to be a simple overnight hike. When he didn't return, searchers found his campsite perfectly intact. Tent zipped, food untouched, gear still dry. But there were no footprints, no scent trail for dogs to follow. Rangers said it looked as if he had simply walked out of existence. Both Dan and his dog were never found. Case 2. Thomas Irwin, Mesa Verde National Park, 2024 to 2025. 73-year-old Thomas Irwin went missing while exploring the trails near Chapin Mesa. He was familiar with the area and always carried GPS and water. For over a year, rangers searched steep canyons and ancient dwellings with no success, until 2025, when hikers discovered his remains miles from where he was last seen. No one can explain how he ended up there or why his gear was found neatly stacked beside him. Case 3, Martha Ann Overholser, Grand Canyon National Park, 2024. 66-year-old Martha Ann Overholser left her hotel in December 2024 to go sightseeing along the South Rim. She never returned. Her car was found parked near Desert View Point, but despite days of air searches and tracking dogs, not a single belonging has ever been recovered. Rangers say it's one of the eeriest disappearances in Grand Canyon history. No clues, no witnesses, and total silence from one of the most visited parks in America. 3 parks, 3 people. No signs of a struggle, no logical explanation. And every ranger who's read these files says the same thing. Something out there doesn't want to be found. These missing 411 cases are so bizarre, even seasoned park rangers can't explain them. Case 1, Jared Negrete, San Bernardino National Forest, California. Jared Negrete was only 12 years old when he went missing during a Boy Scout hike near Mount San Gorgonio. Searchers found his backpack, his camera, and photos he took right before disappearing, including a final haunting picture of just his eyes. But here's the part that chills rangers. Despite one of the largest searches in California history, not a single footprint or piece of clothing was ever found beyond that point. It's like he walked off the trail and simply ceased to exist. Case 2. Chris Sherpa Fowler, Pacific Crest Trail, Washington. Chris Fowler, known as Sherpa, was an experienced thru hiker attempting the PCT. He was last seen near White Pass, calm, smiling, and in good condition. Then, nothing. His phone was off. His gear never turned up. Experienced hikers say Chris was too skilled to just walk off a cliff or get lost. Rangers still say this is one of the most baffling disappearances in Washington Trail history. Case 3, Dior Kunz, on Timber Creek Campground, Idaho. During a family camping trip in rural Idaho, little Dior Kunz vanished in broad daylight, while standing just feet away from multiple adults. Search teams tracked the area for weeks. Dogs picked up no solid scent, no clothing, no prints, no drag marks, not even a sock. Veteran searchers said the terrain should have revealed something, but Dior left behind zero trace, as if he was lifted out of the area entirely. 3 different states, 3 different terrains, yet the same impossible pattern. People disappearing without a single clue left behind. And Rangers still talk about these cases, because none of them make sense. Which case do you think is the most unexplainable, and what do you think happened to them? Some missing 411 cases never make the headlines, but they haunt park rangers for years. These are the disappearances they can't forget. Case 1, the vanishing of Kenny Veach, Nevada, 2014. Kenny was an experienced hiker who claimed to have found a strange cave-shaped opening in the Nevada desert that made his body vibrate with fear. Determined to explore it further, he set out again, this time alone. He never returned. Searchers found his cell phone near an abandoned mine shaft, but no sign of him. Rangers still talk about his story, wondering if he stumbled into something he shouldn't have. Case 2, the strange case of Jason Jolkowski, Omaha, Nebraska, 2001. Though outside a park, Rangers often discuss his case for its sheer impossibility. Jason left home to walk less than a mile to meet a coworker for a ride. He never arrived, and no evidence was ever found. The idea that someone could disappear in broad daylight in a populated area still unsettles investigators. Case 3, the disappearance of Michael Heron, Great Smoky Mountains, 2008. Michael was an experienced outdoorsman who told friends he was going to ride his ATV in the mountains. His ATV was later found abandoned along a trail, with no sign of a struggle. Extensive searches yielded nothing. Rangers say the spot where it was found is particularly eerie, isolated, silent, and difficult to reach. If you were working as a ranger, would you ever feel safe alone in these places? Which case do you think has the strangest details? Comment below and be ready for part 7, because these stories only get weirder. Some vanishings are so strange, even seasoned rangers admit they'll never forget them. These are the cases that still haunt them to this day. Case 1, George Pence, Rocky Mountain National Park, 1940s. George set out to hunt elk in the remote backcountry. His rifle, gear, and camp were found undisturbed, coffee still warm on the fire, but George himself had vanished. Despite weeks of searching, no sign of him was ever recovered, and rangers still talk about the bizarre vanishing camp. Case 2, the disappearance of James Tedford, Vermont, 1949. James boarded a bus heading toward Bennington, Vermont. Witnesses saw him seated mid-ride, but when the bus arrived, he was gone. His belongings were untouched in the overhead rack, yet James had simply vanished. This case remains one of the most unnerving mysteries of the so-called Bennington Triangle. Case 3, the vanishing of Bessie and Glenn Hyde, Grand Canyon, 1928. The young couple set out on a honeymoon rafting trip down the Colorado River, aiming to set speed records. Their boat was later found intact, fully stocked with supplies, floating quietly on the river. But Bessie and Glenn had disappeared without a trace. No bodies were ever recovered, and to this day, rangers say it's one of the strangest unsolved mysteries in Grand Canyon history. If you were the ranger reading these case files, would you believe they were accidents or something much darker? Which case haunts you the most? Let me know in the comments, and don't miss part 8. Rangers say some vanishings stick with them forever. Disappearances so strange, they defy all logic. These are 3 missing 411 cases that still haunt investigators. Case 1, Thelma Pauline, Polly Melton, Great Smoky Mountains, 1981. Polly was 58, hiking with two friends on a trail she knew well. At one point, she casually walked a few steps ahead of them. The group expected to see her at the end of the trail, but Polly never appeared. No calls for help, no belongings, no footprints. She simply vanished on one of the most traveled trails in the Smokies. Rangers call it one of the most baffling disappearances in park history. Case 2. George Pence, Glacier National Park, 1950s. George was an older man familiar with the outdoors. He set out on a short walk near Glacier National Park and was never seen again. Searchers found no clothing, no equipment, no body. His case was marked by investigators as having no logical explanation. To this day, rangers say his disappearance is one of the strangest in the region. Case 3, Michael Heron, Great Smoky Mountains, 2008. Michael was 51, an experienced outdoorsman who loved riding ATVs through the mountains near his home. One afternoon, he went out for a ride and never returned. Search teams found his ATV, but no Michael. No tracks, no belongings, nothing to suggest where he'd gone. Locals still whisper about what could have happened in those woods. 3 people, 3 vanishings, no trace, no answers. If you were the ranger reading these case files, how would you even begin to explain them? Which one do you find the most chilling? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't miss part 9. National Park rangers say these cases keep them up at night. People who vanished without a trace in places you thought were safe. Case 1. The strange disappearance of Trenny Gibson, 1976, Great Smoky Mountains, Tennessee. 16-year-old Trenny Gibson was on a school field trip hiking the Appalachian Trail. Witnesses saw her just steps ahead of the group. Then she was gone. Search teams, bloodhounds, helicopters, nothing. No clothing, no scent trail, no body. Rangers say the forest seemed to just swallow her. Case 2. The vanishing of Timothy Barnes, 1984, Yosemite National Park, California. Camping with family near Tenaya Lake, he went to gather firewood just 50 yards from camp and never came back. Rangers found wood neatly stacked, as if he'd been interrupted mid-task. Despite a week-long search with divers, dogs, and helicopters, there was no trace. The case remains open. Case 3. The disappearance of Amy Roe Bechtel, 1997, Shoshone National Forest, Wyoming. Amy, a 24-year-old marathon runner, was training on mountain roads. Her car was found parked along the route, keys still inside. Tracks suggested she'd started up a trail. Then they vanished in loose soil. Rangers say the location and sudden disappearance felt almost like she'd been lifted out of the landscape itself. Some rangers say the wilderness doesn't just hide people, it keeps them. Which case do you think is the most chilling?